Is Oprah Winfrey a Christian? It's the top question and topic that you, the Christian podcast listener, have been searching for. But since she won't return my calls, I'm going to have to do my best to answer it myself. I'm Joel Fieri. Stay tuned. Last week, we talked about the documentary American Gospel, Christ Crucified. And in that, we talked about how the two spectrums, the two opposite ends of evangelical Christianity today were highlighted. Pastors from the more progressive, millennial, emergent side of things versus the more traditional conservative evangelical side of things. On the progressive, emergent side of things was, among the many pastors and theologians and thinkers, was Oprah Winfrey. If you know anything about Oprah, you know that she's gotten rather spiritual these days. She's worked a lot with Rob Bell, who is one of the famous emergent millennial pastors, and she has a lot to say about spirituality, God, and things of that nature. And she was in this documentary. She had a prominent part. So when we looked at the research we did and found that the number one question people are searching for in Christian podcasts is Oprah a Christian? I thought, well, since I just watched that documentary, based on what she said, I'll just give you my thoughts. As I said, I don't know. Of course, the spiritual answer would be, only God knows. Okay, podcast over. But that won't get us clicks, so I need to get into it a little myself. And what I want to do in answering this question is determine where we're coming from on the question. Are we really asking? Why are we asking it? Are we asking it out of kind of a pop culture, gossipy, need to know, inquiring minds need to know basis? Are we really concerned for Oprah's soul? Is that why we're asking if she's a Christian? Or because she is so outspoken on Christian matters and spiritual matters, should we be listening to her? Is she a Christian? Should I be listening to her? So those are the three approaches I'm going to take. If it's the first question, just kind of a gossipy pop culture, I don't know what to tell you. I could go that direction and tell you, well, she said this and she was seen doing this. In her past, she did that. Believe me, I could probably do that, but I'd be out of my depth. I don't know. And you'll have to look somewhere else for the gossipy take on Oprah's spiritual status. If you're concerned for Oprah's soul, if you're a fan, she is a very thoughtful person. She's been in the limelight for several decades now and has a loyal following. As far as I can tell, she is a very nice, good person. So if there's a concern for her soul, based on what I've heard from her on spiritual matters in this documentary and otherwise, pray for Oprah. I would have my doubts. I couldn't say. It actually is in God's hands. Only He knows. But from the evidence I've seen, I think she's listening to the wrong people in her search, in her journey. So you might want to pray for her. Now, if you're asking this question, should I listen to Oprah? Should I take Oprah's advice? I would say no. Danger, do not enter. As I said, she's listening to the wrong people who do not believe and by their own admission can't believe what the Bible says about God. The way to salvation, the attributes of God, our responsibility towards God. As far as I can answer the question on Oprah, I would say I can't help you with the gossipy part of it. If you're concerned for her soul, please pray, because it doesn't look like she's listening to the people she should be and accepting the ideas that she should be towards salvation. In her past, she might have been saved, but all evidence, to me, points to some doubt. So please pray for Oprah. And again, if you're thinking of following her advice, if you're thinking of listening to her and joining her in some of her philosophies and the movement that she's helping to perpetuate, I would say don't go there. It doesn't look good from this perspective. So I hope that helps. Again, it's a little bit of a strange question for me to tackle. I don't usually get into these kinds of things, but since, again, that's what we're here for, to answer all the questions, hopefully, that you've been searching for. Next week, I'll have more to say on the dichotomy and the major division within Christianity that I see, that I alluded to in this podcast and my previous one on the millennial emergent philosophy that's still around after 20 years and traditional Christian evangelicalism. I think it's a very important subject. As I always say, we need to get this right, folks. So stay tuned for next week. Thanks for listening.